Hi, folks, and welcome back to our podcast, Native Narratives. This episode is for all the kids who've been bargaining with their parents for 5 minutes more of playtime. Our guest for this episode is an expert on parent-child playfulness. She did her master's in UCL on child development and her PhD from the University of Cambridge. Please welcome the founder of Peas and a Pod, Dr. Krishna Kulkarni.
Thank you so much, Tanvi, and hi everyone. I'm super excited to be here today and talk about play for parents and a little bit for kids and definitely for the kids in all of us.
Krishna, tell us, how did you come about to researching and studying play?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel super excited that I get to be in this space and feel so lucky that I've ended up here. I don't think I ever thought that I could professionally play, so I love that. When I was a child, I wanted to work with children. I wanted to be with children, help them feel better, and my parents would call me Dadi Amma because I was always like trying to get the younger kids and take care of them and all of that. And I thought the easiest way or the best way to work with children at that age was to be a pediatrician. I also wanted to be a teacher, but pediatrician sounded very exciting because that's how you could help children and make them feel better, and that sounded great to me. So as a really young girl, I learned how to spell pediatrician, and that's what I'm going to do. And then along the way, medicine and what all goes behind it started coming in, and I was like, maybe not so much. And then I got introduced to psychology around, I got aware of psychology around 7th, 8th standard when I was an early teenager. And that I really liked. Understanding people's behavior, and then you map that onto children, so you look at children's behavior, and that just sort of became a natural progression for me, and I felt like I'd really found my calling, and that is what I was meant to do. So fortunately for me, and maybe boring for others, it's never been a big revelation to me or some big discovery that here is the thing I'm meant to do or anything. It's always been very natural and very obvious, this path for me. So I did my undergrad, my bachelor's in psychology in India. I went to Ferguson College in Pune. And I then had a slight detour, tried some other things, and I'm glad I scratched that itch. But that just confirmed to me that this is where I needed to be, with psychology, with young children. I then did my master's at UCL, like you mentioned, which is University College London in the UK. I also worked at a nursery while I was doing that. I worked with young children. There was a point when my youngest baby was 3 months old. Absolutely loved it. And that is when I found that this practice, this hands-on, this application part, that's what's exciting rather than being in a classroom and following textbooks and lectures and everything. Cut forward to job hunting and all of that joy. I very luckily found PEDAL, which is the Center for Research in Play in Education, Development and Learning, giving us PEDAL. Which is a research center specializing in play at the University of Cambridge, funded by the Lego Foundation. I heard all of those things exactly, right? And that was my reaction. I was like, oh yeah, sure, let's do this. So I applied to be a research assistant, and it's a fantastic place. The team is amazing. The work they're doing is so incredible. And I loved my time there, absolutely. A little later, a few months later, they were looking for a role. They'd opened up a PhD position, and I threw my hat in the mix. And also, I think by that point, because I'd spent a lot of time with children in the academic sense, right? So I was looking at daycares, I was looking at children. As a research assistant, I worked on projects where we were looking at children's cognitive development, their independence in learning through their first year in school. So I'd done a lot of classroom-based work. And my question constantly then was, but what's happening at home? So we have this classroom of 20 kids, 30 kids. Why is it that when I give them the same exercise or the same activity, some kids do well with it, let us say, some kids just are really unhappy and they don't like it, or they enjoy different things. So that is when I sort of wanted to focus on the home side of things, which is where then I did my, I focused my PhD. And yeah, that was my journey to my PhD. I spent time around play, around parents. I also brought in a little bit of cross-cultural aspects because by that point I'd spent about a third of my life almost in the UK. So there were very obvious cross-cultural influences for me, and loved every minute of it. It was fun, well, almost every minute of it.
That sounds exciting, but I want to know more about your PhD topic. So, what do you mean by play at home? Like, to my understanding, play can happen anywhere, but why specifically at home?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such a great question. And I'm actually going to spend a little bit of time just touching on play 1st. It's exactly that. Play can happen anywhere, right? Play can be you and me sitting right now here with a board game. It could be even just you and I trying to build some kind of funny rhyme. It could be that we're tearing pieces together and trying to build a collage of something. All of this counts as play. Play in essence is something that is fun. It is something that, especially with children, helps with learning. And it's just enjoyable, right? And to your point, that can happen anywhere. The thing is that in schools, in daycares, play can happen. It does happen, of course. But very often people get tied down by things like curriculum. They get tied down by, you know, we need to complete these many activities or fill in this report for the child and things like that. And we can have a whole separate conversation about what that means for children's education. But at home, things are a little bit freer. Things are a little, you know, you don't have to complete writing this in this much time. The adult's attention is not split across 6 different children and so on, which is what brought me to this whole idea of play at home. And the other thing is, it's also about the early years. And when I say early years, I mean 0 to 5.
Okay.
Children are going to nursery, preschool, daycare, toddler, parent classes earlier and earlier nowadays. But that 0 to 5 age group is still where children are spending most of their time at home, around adults, whether it is a nanny, grandparents, parents, joint family setup, whatever it may be, a lot of their time is at home. And that is why I wanted to spend that time over there and say, okay, what is going on? What is the environment that is being created? And that's the other thing that's really important for me to look at, is this concept of environment, right?
Okay.
A 1-year-old child is, you know, just learning to walk. They're just moving around. They're not going to suddenly open a cabinet, climb up 2 shelves and say, I'm going to play this game now. They're not going to do that. What they are going to do is pick up what is within their reach. And the people who decide what is within a child's reach is the adults, right? So whether that is because they've placed a bookshelf over here, or they've laid out a play mat for a child to play over here, or they have set up some messy play or some kind of toy for them, kids are at that age especially limited by what is easily accessible for them in their environment, and the people who decide that is the adults. So that's what I wanted to try and understand, and I still want to kind of spend time with.
That's interesting. That's very interesting to point out that only parents control so much of what goes into play. But another point that you touched upon is like skill development, and I want to focus a little bit on that. So when we talk about play or sensory play, for instance, do you think it's targeted towards some sort of a cognitive, motor, or emotional development, like specifically targeted towards something like that?
Honestly, it is targeted, focusing on sensory play here, it is honestly targeted to all of it. Sensory play is such a wide open window that opens up so many paths for children's development and learning, that I think it really is this holy grail for play, for children's development, for connection that parents or adults can have with their children. So I really think that there is a lot to do over there. But the one thing I really want to emphasize and underscore over here is there's a lot to learn, there's lots of development and benefits to play, but really, I can't stress this enough, the most important function of play is also just to have fun, right? It is for whether it's two kids or two adults or adult child, whatever the dynamic is, people I think are now getting so caught up with, okay, but what is the purpose of it? What is the benefit? What is the gain in this? Why am I doing this with my child? That sometimes you're just doing it to have fun. You're doing it to be silly. You're doing it to get messy. You're doing it to just spend time with your kid. So I want to make sure that we're kind of honoring that and recognizing that as well, that play doesn't always have to have a hidden agenda. Sometimes it's just, yeah, it's fun, and that's why we're doing it. But if, we can talk in specific about certain types of play or certain forms of development as well.
So on that note, for our audience who might not be very familiar with what sensory play is, do you think you could describe it to them in terms that, it's easy for like parents at home to understand?
Yeah, absolutely. So we typically know of the 5 senses,
Yeah.
right? So we have sight. Am I going to remember all of them? Let's find out. We have sight, we have smell, we have taste, we have touch, we have hearing. Did I repeat anything?
You got all of them.
Okay, fantastic. So these are the 5 basic senses that everyone always talks about. Sensory play is when we're engaging these senses.
Okay.
Right? So we're talking about a form of play where you are engaging your vision, your hearing, your taste, your smell, and your touch. And for us as adults now, it's very obvious, right? Like I'm picking up this book over here, and as I'm running my hand over it, it's in my hand, I don't feel anything specific. But for a child, where the print is, it's a little different, right? It's a little smooth. Here it's a little rough. That's my touch engaging. When I look at it, I see a little bit of green over here. I see a little bit of red over here. There's so much white. That's my vision engaging over there. And for children, when they come in, we're talking about newborn babies, they're blank canvases, but with neurons firing at thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions per second, right? Like it's constantly going off. And when you've got that much ability to learn, but babies aren't able to move around, crawl around, grab things, pick up things yet. They're not able to read, they're not able to talk, but their easiest way of learning and development is through their senses, right? So what that means is that for a child, to really help a child's development, we need to engage their vision, we need to engage their touch, we need to engage their hearing, their smell, and their taste. These are the 5 most basic ones, and we can talk a little bit about how to engage these different senses or how they just automatically engage through different types of play that children do or engagement in their world. The more sort of hidden senses or the lesser spoken about ones, you and I spoke about this briefly earlier today, is vestibular, which is sort of your balance. The reason toddlers, as they're learning to walk, keep falling over so much is because they haven't got that balance. If they had that balance straight up, day one, chalo niklo, that doesn't happen, right? They take a while to develop that. That's also why some children, when they discover things like turning around in circles, they keep going round and round and round, they get dizzy, they fall down. And for us, it's like, yeah, stop doing that, you're gonna get sick. For them, it's play. For them, they're engaging that vestibular balance sense and trying to get a sense of, ooh, this feels different. Let me see how I can experiment with it. Similarly, you've got something called interoception, which is your internal senses, your internal awareness, which is around things like hunger, tiredness, sleep, exhaustion, things like that, right? And then you've also got proprioception, which is more your awareness of things outside of you. including your own body. So when you do things like, where's your nose, where's your belly button, can you show me your head, shoulders, knees and toes, all of that, that comes towards proprioception as well. Now, these are just everyday, naturally occurring, cannot function without sort of senses, and they're not really taught to us as senses to be mindful of. But these are also really important for children's development, and there are lots of ways of engaging all 8 of these. So the 5 I said first, plus the 3 others, all 8 of these, engaging these in play with children.
That's very interesting, and I love that you touched upon the 8 senses instead of the 5 senses, because the last 3 senses are not very popular. So, slight segue into what Arisa is doing in January. We have the Creative Lab Festival coming soon, and this time we're focusing on the 8 senses. And on that note, is there anything parents can do to engage these senses and create play opportunities for kids at home? Like, using
so
these
much
senses?
that parents can do all the time, everyone can do all the time. Absolutely, yes, I'd love to talk about that. I think we can go into some detail, but the first thing to be mindful of over here is your child's development, right? Your children develop at different stages. They are going to hit milestones along their way, and visual stimulation, visual sensory play for a 1-month-old will look very different to visual sensory play for a 1-year-old, which will be very different to something for a 5-year-old, say, right? So the first thing to keep in mind is that when you are planning sensory play, the fundamental you need to think of is what seems developmentally appropriate for my child. Now, when I say developmentally appropriate, I mean that even like when I'm engaging my sense of touch, turning pages, my fine motor skills, I'm able to do that great. Thick pages help me with that. A 1-month-old, not so much, right? So trying to be mindful when you're planning activities, when you're trying to engage your child, to think of what is their current ability level and therefore what will engage them. So there are a few different things that we can do. I'll kind of breeze through the age groups. With newborns, I'm going to look straight at you here, parents, for this second here. Newborns seem so still and so stationary, and like all they do is sleep, cry, poop, feed. There's not a lot they're doing, but that is when their brains are developing the most. And that is when they are going to benefit from sensory inputs, sensory play, sensory stimulation the most. So really that 0 month or day 0 onwards to about 3-4 months, go nuts with the sensory play. Try to do as much as you can with your children. So what that might look like with a newborn child, we're going to park taste a little bit, because there's not a lot you can do with a child who's typically breastfed or formula fed at that point. But what you can do is a lot with touch. So with touch, what that might look like is, even here, I'm touching the glass, it feels different.
Yeah.
I'm touching the cane, it feels different. But as I'm doing that, can you hear that?
Yeah. Sound,
And
yeah.
that sounds different as well. So what I can start saying is, oh look, this is smooth, this is glass, and I can go, this is rough, and this is wicker. So I can start introducing them to that. I can touch this with their hands. I can touch this with their feet. And that's going to start engaging different parts of their bodies. Because kids, it's around after a few weeks of being on this planet that they start realizing that, oh hey, I have hands and I have feet. And the way you draw their attention to it is by getting them to touch these different things. Hot, cold, even just blowing on their feet. That is also why, like, if you tickle a baby's belly, or you make funny blow raspberries against their stomach, all of that is sensory play. And what that's doing is suddenly saying, oh, it feels funny over here. Or, oh, this sounds funny. That's a weird sound. So that is what is engaging them over there. So if, say, you're blowing onto your baby's tummy, that is touch happening right there. That is sound happening right there. If your baby is here, your face has gone from this to this. So their visual stimulus has changed. A little bit of smell, because baby's sense of smell is quite on at that point.
Okay.
And so they're going to be able to sense that, oh, this is what mama smells like. This is what dadu smells like. And as you go closer to them, they're able to pick up that smell as well. So in this one small playful exchange, you've engaged so many different senses, right? So it's also great when you are able to engage different senses. So this is with our newborns. A lot of people talk about how newborns don't really have a great sense of vision. So we talk about high contrast for young kids, because newborns aren't born with color vision.
Okay.
And so they do really well with high contrast, bold patterns, because that's all they can see. If you give them like a beautifully patterned, intricate design with beautiful colors that as an adult makes us feel things, a child is not going to be able to see that. So coming up with books, toys, printouts, whatever, that engage them at that stage, giving them Play-Doh, giving them velvet, giving them silk, giving them little rattles. Something sounds tinkly, something else sounds like shaking something in like a sand shaker. All of these are ways of engaging them at that age. As you get older, as the baby gets older, we start trying to increase the complexity of those interactions as well, right? So what that might look like, a great way. Now I'm trying to think of ways of engaging sensory play at home for parents. So a great way of doing that is something like cooking, something like baking. Really basic, really easy stuff. But what is baking doing? You've got mixing, you've got that kind of stirring action, and so that has got a little bit of your proprioception, a little bit of balance. You've got your vestibular engagement happening there as well. A little bit of touch, butter squishy, egg is slimy, flour feels powdery, and then when you mix it all up, that's become gooey. Getting your hands into all of that, the different colors, okay, you've got something, maybe you're adding purple food coloring to it or whatever, your colors come in over there. Vanilla smells different to chocolate, smells different to something baking in the oven. So these senses have come in there. And while this may feel like a very grown-up chore sort of thing to do, it's then up to the parents to make it play, right? So I'm going to beat it faster than you, let's see who does it faster, and then you're kind of getting your motor skills in there. Or, ooh, I think it smells like lemon to me. What does it smell like to you? So trying to engage those senses over there. Similarly, something else that parents can do with sensory play at home is a lot of maybe even like making chapatis. Your dough is super easy for kids to like press and roll and twist and break and do whatever. Start making rotis with them. They do not need to be round. They do not need to be in one piece. They do not make a star-shaped roti with them. That's fine. And that's part of the play, right? Like, oh, hey, it looks to me like there's a dragon with a crown. And the child might say, no, actually it's a truck. And that's up to you. That's why your play comes in. But your child's senses have got engaged in all of that kneading and making and everything. Other ways of engaging even those three senses, the less spoken about senses. When your child is walking, when you're walking with your child, and let us say there's a little parapet or low wall that your child is walking on and balancing, that's sensory play.
Oh.
That's your child learning to balance and knowing that, okay, I need to keep my feet close together. That counts as sensory play. If you decide that, there's another adult, let's say another parent is on the other side, you are here, put your child in a little blanket, swing your baby. That's sensory play because they're feeling that rocking motion. That's again your vestibular stimulation coming in over there. So My point in all of this is that people talk about sensory play in terms of here is a sensory tray that has these different noodles or rice or slime and sand, and that's amazing, right? We want to have as much stimulation for our kids as we can. But also sensory play exists in these everyday small routine activities. And my point in saying all of this is that parents don't need to feel like, oh my God, it's going to be a mess, or it's going to, I have to clear things up or buy special equipment. Aata ghar pe hota hai. Everyone has atta dough at home. Everyone will have a blanket that they can put their kid in. It's easy enough to do sensory play with all of that, and all of this helps your child's development so much.
That's very true. That's very insightful, actually. So, I want to ask you about a different kind of group of children who could engage in sensory play. So, we know that some kids have sensory processing issues, right? They get overstimulated, understimulated, you can't sustain their attention. How can they indulge in sensory play? Is this something that would work for them? Like, can it be used to help them ground themselves into reality when maybe they're having a meltdown?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is such an important question as well, because through my work, I'm seeing more and more teachers and parents talk about how, oh, my child is so distracted, or my child is hyperactive, or my child just doesn't sit still, or my child is throwing tantrums. And first things first, all of these things, perfectly normal. It's not a huge concern. Of course, there are cases that need special attention, but a lot of this is very often a result of your environment.
Okay.
Now, what I mean by that is imagine a little child, who is at home. They have a loud toy playing over here. Right? It's like tinkling and flashing. It's got flashing lights on it. It's got some song that's playing. It's moving around and the kid is watching that. Someone else over there has the TV playing. That's going on over there. Maybe someone's talking loudly on a phone call over there. Even for adults, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Right? As adults, we struggle to focus when we have our phone flashing a notification at us, and then we've kind of got the TV playing in the background, or we've got music playing in the background, we've got two screens to be efficient with work, and then suddenly you remember something, write it in your notebook. There's a lot of stimulation happening all the time, and young children need to learn to regulate. Now, what regulation means is being able to manage yourself internally and externally. So internally means your feelings. It means your frustration. It means your tiredness. It means your irritation, excitement, fear, all of those emotional things, right? External is things like there is a lot of sound here right now, or things are too bright, or it's too crowded. For us as adults, we struggle sometimes to identify what is triggering us. We just feel drained, we just feel tired, but we're able to power through. Because we have developed that self-regulation. Children don't really begin to develop their self-regulation until about 7 years old.
Wow.
Now that's a long time for them to be trying to navigate this by themselves. Navigating that sound, navigating that chaos, navigating the overstimulation by themselves. What we can do is help them navigate these things by themselves.
Okay.
And like you said, a great way of grounding them is engaging their senses. That is why if someone even say has a panic attack or an anxiety attack, with adults as well, one thing we say is to kind of really hug, swaddle, tighten the kind of pressure around the person. And what that does is helps to kind of soothe your nervous system a little bit. With children, what that can look like is a fidget toy. maybe pressing different textures. You have those kind of bubble wrap popping kind of toys. That is something that can help. Squeeze toys when you're feeling really stressed, you're feeling really nervous. That is something that you can do. One of the things that I do with some of my clients who have young children who get very worked up is something called birthday candle breaths, where kids love cake, love candles, love singing happy birthday.
Who doesn't?
Right? So what we try and do there is say, hey, okay, let's practice our candle breaths. What we're going to do is, we're pretending that we're blowing out a candle. Do that 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. That starts bringing you in to regulate. Similarly, another thing that you can do is this thing called the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique, which is bringing in our good old 5 senses. And what we do with that is tell the child, or even adults, look for 5 things that you can see. Now this is, we're talking about this when a person has heightened emotions or is feeling extra stressed or worked up or whatever. So we say 5 things that you can see around you. Chair, curtain, birds, trees, whatever.
Yeah.
4 things that you can hear around you. I might need to check that. 4 things that you can hear around you. 3 things that you can touch.
Okay.
2 things you can smell. And 1 thing that you can taste. And you may not always be able to, I mean, if you're sitting in your office or you're sitting in a meeting, you may not be able to taste something immediately. In which case you imagine like, ooh, what does it taste like to have that chocolate that I really like? Or what that achar that I really like eating, what did that taste like? Oh, that dosa that I had with it. That starts engaging, and the minute you engage all of these senses, it helps you root into the present a little bit, and whatever is overwhelming you, whatever is washing over you at that point, you kind of take a break and recalibrate from there. And with young children, if we start engaging their senses early on, these are techniques that we can teach them that they can use through their adult life as well.
So another question I want to talk about, let's look at the parent side of these things now. So sometimes when play gets messy, like when kids throw tantrums, bang like spoons and plates, or like put atta everywhere, it can be quite a task for parents to clean up after them. And it could be overwhelming for parents as well, right? So I wanted to know, what can parents do in these situations where they can provide ample time and opportunity for children to play, but at the same time, how can they adapt with these stressful situations?
Yeah, absolutely, and such a valid point. I think sensory play, as we have been talking about, it, is so important. And what I really want parents to remember is that sensory play is all of these things that we have spoken about so far, but the most common association with sensory play is messy play. And I'll be honest, I love messy play. And messy play can be digging a hole in a pot, in a garden, in a park. It could be a sandpit, sandcastle sort of thing. It could be, like we spoke about, cooking, laundry, folding laundry. All of that is sensory play. Kids somehow just like when things get messy, right? Like they like the color to be smeared everywhere and the cream to be on the floor and the dough, the flour to be flying everywhere, scribbling on all sorts of things. And kids just somehow gravitate towards that. And that's not always fun for parents. So I think the first thing I would say to parents in that is, where possible, don't curtail it, right?
Okay.
Don't cut it out altogether. But try to have it in a way that is doable for you. So what I mean by that is, if you know that your child has to get to nursery, preschool by 11 a.m., don't set up messy play at 10 a.m., right? But let us say on Sunday, you have some downtime, the whole family is at home. Try to set up messy play in a way that is more manageable for you, right? So if that means setting up a bunch of cling film on the ground beforehand to make it easier to clean and remove things, setting out newspapers, maybe do it in the garden, maybe do it on your balcony or a terrace, do it in the kitchen or do it in the bathroom. Kids love water play. Put them in a bucket in the bathroom. That's what I did when I was a child. There's so many pictures of me just sitting in a bucket splashing away over there. You don't need to have fancy contraption. But the feeling of overwhelmingness is real, right? So I think the first thing the parents need to do is, one, accept that they should do it. It helps their child. But also accept that they are in charge. So do it in a way that they feel more able to do it. The other thing to do is, like you said, banging on vessels and stuff, right? Again, super fun for kids to do, and they get louder and more incessant, and that's fine. You, however, as a parent, are slowly losing your mind as your child is doing that, and you're not able to focus on anything. And so maybe what you can do is, you've got a spoon and a bowl. Say, hey, listen, can you show me how a mouse would do it if a mouse had to do it? And then go really soft and introduce those words to them. And you go, see, soft, 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 soft. And now can you do it loud and go bang, 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 really loud. Oh, now can you do it soft again? So kind of try to bring those different ways of doing it. Wrap the spoon up in a cloth. That's okay. It's still going to make a noise, right? If I do this versus, that's already different sounds. And that's still interesting for a child. So what if you were to get them a spoon that's wrapped up in a towel or in a cloth? That's still going to be fun for the child. It's going to be a different sound for them to explore. But your sanity is preserved a little bit, right? Another thing also that is possible is having contained packets when we talk about tactile sensory play. So we don't want rice to get all up in everything, right? We don't want that slime to go everywhere. But if you were to put it in a little secured Ziploc pouch, put that inside another Ziploc pouch or seal it in some way that your child can't access it, that then means there's no cleaning up for you, right? But your child is still going to feel the plastic or whatever layer you've used, but they'll be able to, if you imagine, I want you to imagine now for a second, a cloth pouch.
Okay.
In that cloth pouch, imagine you're feeling sand inside it. Imagine you've got another one that has rice inside it. The two feel different,
Yeah.
right? Similarly, let us say you have one pouch in which one small plastic bottle, reusable, your usual bottles. One maybe has dal in it.
Okay.
That sounds a certain way when you shake it. Another one maybe has colored water, and that goes splash, splash over here. And this is again sensory play, because the child is seeing that, oh, this is spilling differently. This dal is yellow, but this water is actually purple and sparkly, and it's moving differently. And I shake this, and I shake this, and this feels different. So that is a way of sensory play. That does not mean the parent has to sit cleaning up or get noise cancelling earphones or have to renovate their house after the child has decided to paint on everything. The other thing that's really important for parents to keep in mind is when your child gets messy and you feel like, no, don't do that, wahan pe paint mat karo, don't spill it on your dress, don't do this, don't do that. Why? Is it okay for your child while they're playing, let us say they don't have to go anywhere else, there's no birthday party, there's no class, there's no relatives coming over, nothing of that sort. Let us say that it is just playtime and the child decides that, what, actually I want to smear that flour all over my hair. Now for us it feels like, oh my god, that means I have to wash their hair and then wash those clothes and then clean the balcony, and man, that's just such a pain. But occasionally, if you feel like, what, actually, all I have to do is give them a bath and then clean this place up a little bit once more. Okay, but think of the fun that I can have with her if I do that. Think of what we can build together if we do that. So I think what is really important for parents to keep in mind over here also is sometimes lose control. Sometimes feel like it's okay to just let go and say, let's have that fun, let's get messy. And that problem is for 4 p.m. Krishna to deal with, not right now. Right now, let's just be in the moment with my child and then deal with this later. It's not always possible, and I know that. But occasionally, I think cutting yourself slack as parents is really important as well.
So, one thing that I know, I've seen also, is that to avoid such kind of messy play, parents tend to push the play onto technology and devices and stuff. And there has been a steady growth in how much technology is being included in a child's life, right?
Yeah.
Even school uses a lot of technology right now, and a lot of these shows, even the educational shows, you see on YouTube, and it's convenient to hand them an iPad and ask them to watch it. But do you think sensory play could move on to that? To an iPad, to technology?
I completely get, first of all, why parents would use screens. It's very often a sort of silver bullet that, you know, my kid's not doing something, not listening, not crying, not eating, going on crying, whatever. Give them a screen, they'll be fine. So I get the convenience of it. But I feel like in asking your question, you have also answered it, where it is sensory play. It is about engaging the senses, right? And what a screen is doing, what a device, a screen essentially is doing, is engaging your visual senses. You're not going to be able to lick a screen, even though babies might. You're not going to be able to lick a screen. You're not going to be able to twist it and see what comes out of it. You're not going to be able to break it. Well, all of these things you're able to. You're not necessarily going to do it or should not be allowed to do it. You're not going to have that same stimulation, right? You will hear different sounds maybe. So I would say the extent of sensory stimulation that is possible by a screen, through a screen, is visual and auditory. These are your two most likely things. Smell, not possible. Taste, not possible. Touch also not really, because whether I touch your phone or that TV there, it's going to feel similar, right? It's not going to be like, ooh, the caterpillar is bumpy, but the snake is slimy and the flower is soft. I can't tell that by watching a screen as a child. Now, as an adult, when I look at something on a screen, I can say, ooh, that looks so soothing and that looks so soft and so calm. But that's because I've had these tactile experiences as a child, and I can make those associations now. So I think it is actually a big concern for me as a professional in the field that I think children aren't getting enough sensory exposure. They're not getting their hands dirty. They're not picking up different things, you know, seeing what they can make with it. Things are being a little too reliant on technology. And technology or content creators are realizing this. And what's happening as a result, algorithms, getting that subscriber base, getting that follower base, it's become so important in today's world that it doesn't always mean that the content is right. Just because your child wants to watch something, just because your child enjoys watching something, doesn't mean, going back to what we spoke about first, doesn't mean it's developmentally appropriate. Right? So what is happening now with a lot of new shows, content that's available on YouTube or wherever, is that it's very stimulating for children, but it's overstimulating. And what that may look like is something flashing here and something popping up here and like 20 different colors on screen, and then we zoom in on a face and then zoom out again, and then something is rotating over here, and then the song is playing in the background and someone is shouting over it. And even just seeing it is exhausting for me, right? And in fact, research has shown that the kind of content that has been coming out recently, the frames per second, the color used, the music used, is all adding to overstimulation for children. When children are overstimulated, what that does is that they are less able to regulate themselves because there's that much more that they have to regulate. When they are overstimulated, they're kind of starting to cap out on what else they are able to do, paying attention to things, being rooted, grounded in your surroundings. That becomes harder for them. And that's where then people say, oh, my child's not paying attention, my child is not listening, my child has to always watch the screen. And that's not to say screen time is bad. Sweden in fact recently strongly advises families to not have any screen time, zero, for children under 2 years old. And above 2 years, they have strict regulations in place or advisories in place. There is content out there that is good. So if you're looking for what your child can consume on screens, look at something that's interactive in a way that asks questions, encourages conversations. Look at something that is slow, soft, calming. It takes pauses to encourage that conversation with the, can you see where this thing is? Rather than, oh, this is here and this is there and this is here and now this is going to dance. Like, rather than doing that, let's take that time for the children to really engage themselves in that. And very often parents may also say that, yeah, my child finds that very boring. My child enjoys watching this. That's because it's designed to capture your child's attention. Spend a little bit of time to help your child tune into something else and let them watch that instead. And another great way to manage your child's screen time is to also watch it with them. So rather than just keep it playing and you're away doing your thing, which sometimes is necessary, at times just say, hey, what are you watching? What is that dog doing over there? Oh, they've gone to the park. Do you remember when we went to the park, you went on the slide also? So rather than it just becoming a passive thing where the child is receiving all of this stimulation, make it interactive. You bring in that thinking, you bring in the additional sensation. You see a yellow digger on screen, say, go, 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 you have a yellow digger, go bring that, let's see what that looks like. So try and be that connection for your child between this intangible and tangible / tactile world that children are in.
That's so insightful. I'm now super curious to know, what do you do at Peas in a Pod? Is this all that you, like, are these the things you do? Like, can adults come?
Please come. You're always very welcome. Always happy to have anyone as part of this. But at Peas in a Pod, essentially what I do is all of this theory, all of these academic papers, this literature, this gyan that exists locked up in journals and websites and through reams and reams of literature, I try to bring that to parents. I try to say that, hey, listen, typically at this age, given that your child is 16 months old, developmentally, she is able to do X, Y, and Z. Developmentally, this is what is coming up next for your child. Here is what you can do to engage them in these ways. They may be having tantrums. How do you deal with tantrums? How do you deal with school anxiety? These are all very real world problems. And again, overstimulation, coming back to overstimulation for adults, parents are turning to social media, right, for advice. And social media, you watch 1-2 videos, it's going to, completely block your algorithm with, here are more videos. And then what are those videos? Here are 5 things I have done to make my child do X, Y, Z. But that's not your child. That doesn't mean it's going to work with your family, right? 2 of my clients that came to me, both came to me for school anxiety. The presenting symptoms, if you will, were the same, but the root cause was completely different. So you can't copy and paste solutions. And parents don't always have a trusted source that they can go to, because what happens is, oh, my friend said this, my didi said this, my neighbor said this, the nanny said this, the teacher said this, so come, let's try everything. It's not easy being a parent today. There's so much information, there's so much advice, there's so many opinions, so much comparison, and that's just being a parent. Over and above that, you have to deal with being an adult, right? There's so much going on. So what I'm trying to do is say, hey parents, let me get to know you. Let me get to know your family, your values, your child. Let me understand that. And then work with you with all this scientific research knowledge, with all of this theoretical base, with tangible solutions, where parents would say, no, don't want messy play because it gets, makes a mess, obviously. Okay, but how can we make it happen instead? My child wants to learn to read. I don't know how to read to my child, or my child doesn't like books. How do I make that happen? What can we do to kind of engage that? So that's where Peas in a Pod comes in, to kind of personalize parenting support, look at play, and bring in that research, bring in that real, insightful expert advice, to bring that to parents and say, here is a way that you can use it for yourself. So that's what I do. And I think also what I love about it is that I get to work with children, but I'm not fixing children. Because honestly, children don't need fixing. The kids are fine. It's the parents that need the right kind of support. And with all of this knowledge of child psychology, I can't go teach that to a child. What is the child going to do with that theory? But what I can do is try and empower a parent with that knowledge to be like, hey, this is what's happening with your child, and here is how you can help them. So that's what Peas in a Pod does, and you're very welcome to come hang out whenever you want, and pick up some books, have some sensory play in our office, and whenever you want.
That sounds wonderful. I am going to take up that invite. And to all of you, parents, if you are going to look up self-help videos on Instagram, might as well look up Krishna's videos. Follow her on Instagram. Her handle is Peas in a Pod. And kids, if you're looking for a fun place to hang out, I heard her new office has a lot of cool things. And there is a cool corner for adults as well. So pay her a visit.
Yeah, but the kids' corner is cooler.
And thank you so much, Krishna, for being here.
Thank you.
It was such an insightful conversation, and I wish I could go back to being a kid and I could send my mom to you so that I got all of this growing up. And thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Of course, and thank you for having me. I think it's super exciting that Arisa is entering all of these spaces and bringing this knowledge to your listeners, to people everywhere. So thank you for having me. I've absolutely loved our conversation.
So that's it for today's episode, folks. See you next time.